Welcome to Audience First, a podcast for tech marketers looking to break out of the echo chamber to better understand their audience and turn them into loyal customers. Every week, Dani Woolf has brutally honest conversations with busy tech buyers about what really motivates them, the things they hate that vendors do, and what you can do about it. Get access to practical information on how to build authentic relationships with your audience. Listen to and talk with your buyers, and apply real customer insights to your strategies and tactics. You owe it to the world to unmute your mic. Are you ready?
Welcome, everybody. It looks like we have 89 people in the room, which is not stressful at all. I'm glad to be here. My name is Dani Woolf, CEO of Audience First. Thank you to Vladimir and Andre for inviting me to talk to you all today. I'm going to kick it off. Let's go. So, as marketers, a lot of you have been hired to do one very important and difficult thing. That's to persuade busy and sometimes very stressed out buyers, right, to purchase from us. I'm actually here today to tell you to do something that might be an unpopular opinion. I'm here to tell you to stop doing that. I'm going to be dropping a lot of confessions today. One of those confessions is that I've been a digital and demand gen marketer for almost 15 plus years in the tech space, so purely B2B tech marketing for over a decade. 6 of those years have been in security. I like to say, and this is a very metric that I'm very proud of, I pissed off one IT buyer, which essentially led to me founding an agency called Audience First. What we do is we help cybersecurity companies better understand buyers through one-on-one conversations with practitioners, focus groups, podcasts, and surveys. Fun fact about me, I am borderline obsessed with coffee and ice cream, or coffee and ice cream together. So if any of you do not have coffee, tea, water, or something a little bit stronger with you right now, please, by all means, bring that in. Otherwise, this could be a simple email or e-course. Confession. For nearly a decade as a B2B tech marketer, I've spent maybe 50% of my time relentlessly trying to persuade my audience and get their attention so that they could buy for me. I did that through doing some pretty shady tactics, using trivial tasks and tactics that actually had no impact on my business and revenue goals. And what's worse is that those tasks had no positive impact on my customer's experience. In fact, the opposite is true. What happened next is that I quickly felt overwhelmed. I felt stressed from those aggressive growth goals. I was worried about my career growth. I was constantly thinking, how do I level up? And I eventually got so bored doing things that didn't resonate with my buyers that I eventually burnt out. And then just when I thought that it couldn't get any worse, it actually did. I poked the bear, and his name is Chris Roberts. And if any of you who do not know who Chris Roberts is, please, by all means, shift over to my LinkedIn or listen to Audience First podcast or WTF Did I Just Read. Chris is my co-host. He is an actual chief information security officer. They are hard to reach. They are inherently skeptical and wary of marketing and sales. And they're a tough crowd sometimes. And Chris is no exception. He is pretty popular for his brutally honest insight when it comes to shady marketing and sales tactics. So the backstory here about the Boop story, imagine a very large grizzly bear with a painted purple beard and a taser in one hand and a wet fish in the other, ready to smack some sense into a naive tech marketer. He's probably listening to me somewhere. That was the mental picture I had when I first virtually met Chris, the CISO, and pissed him off during a website audit session. Why? Because I used a buzzword and I used it in the completely wrong context to sound smart on the call. And I could hear him over the Jabra. I heard him in his thick Scottish accent. Whoever said that, take them out back right now and taser them. And on that day, I know it sounds a little bit harsh and bleak, but on that day, my life as a tech marketer changed forever. I was faced with this dilemma. I could think about this as water under the bridge, forget about it, take that blue pill, story ends, you wake up tomorrow and it's all the same. Or I could take that red pill and go down a new world and down new deep rabbit holes and discover the truth and nothing more. And that's what I wanted. And I knew that I could handle the truth. So what I essentially did was I asked, okay, Chris, you're all pissed off. I made you upset. Why did I piss you off? And questions like, what didn't work for you? And what could I have done differently? And how does that approach, that alternative approach, impact you for the good and your goals? What are your goals? And so at that time, leaning into those questions became my obsession, right? Getting that feedback that I made, getting that feedback was critical. And I made a commitment after that to dedicate at least every week to learning how IT buyers function, learning about what their motivations and goals are, learning about their pains so that I could never feel or actually cause that frustration that was felt on that particular day with Chris. Now, if you fast forward all the way to this moment in time today, despite my consistent year over year recommendations to do customer research, get closest to your buyers, and my best efforts in providing free security customer research on my podcast, through LinkedIn, at companies, and one on one conversations with marketers like you, many of us still do this. Take this in for a moment. It's rampant. This, among other things that piss off IT buyers, right? And shout out to Clark Barron for hooking us up with this awesome meme, by the way. So, does this mean that we're bad marketers, that we're not good at our job? No. Does it mean that we've failed as a community? No, I don't think so. I just think that we still haven't gotten out of our echo chamber, which is oh so comfy, warm, and fuzzy, right? Our marketing caves, our conversations in the community that we're continuing to have, which is awesome, by the way, don't get me wrong. But to succeed in exponentially growing your business with skeptical buyers, and most importantly, helping them do their jobs better, we need to affect a little bit of change. We need to stop pushing for that attention and we need to put our audience first. Pooch. I know, a little cheesy there. I had to plug it in and go back to the foundations of actually understanding who it is that we are trying to persuade at the end of the day. Okay. To do that, I need a lot of your help. This is a long play. And today we're going to cover a few ways how to actually succeed in doing this. We're going to discover and cover why IT buyers are so skeptical before we figure out how we, you know, attain, engage, and retain our customers. We're going to take a look at why trust and what does trust look like. And then at the end, we can have an open Q&A session. And by all means, I'm actually going to open this up here next to me. Oh, the buzzword, by the way, was zero trust. Zero trust is a methodology, and it actually had no context to the conversation. He actually said the word zero, and then I plugged in zero trust because I thought it paired together, but it didn't. Again, ask me anything at the end, but if you do have questions throughout the conversation, drop them in the comments or in the Q&A, and I'll be happy to address them as best I can. So we all know B2B buying processes are complex. That's not the exception, an exception for IT buyers, right? They're always on the lookout for new tools. They're not just shopping and making quick transactions, right? This is a journey. It's a long play. It's a mission. And they don't only need solutions that meet their needs, but they need solutions that fit into broader, bigger puzzles, their organization and their tech stack, their existing infrastructure. And so because of that complexity, they're going to be inherently skeptical and on the fence about vendors, thinking, will it really work for us? Can we trust that it's going to integrate and mesh well with our infrastructure that we have? It's a big decision, and it's our job to help them make that leap in confidence. We all know there's a lot of information out there. There's also a sea of products out there. Each one of those products is backed by mountains of marketing claims and a lot of technical details and jargon. And so sifting through that is difficult, and it's hard sometimes to, as an IT buyer, to extract what is real and what is not, what's snake oil and what's not. It creates a real challenge for IT buyers in the conversations that I'm having. Figuring out which products are actually gonna deliver value and not increases that skepticism that becomes default. A huge one, you can actually read online, you can read it on LinkedIn, through Reddit threads, traditional marketing and sales tactics that are aggressive or outdated, right? Cold calling, mass emails, and broad advertising campaigns to broad audiences creates a level of skepticism among those IT buyers who prefer relevance and insight over interruption, friction, and volume, right? High pressure sales tactics, no means no, the no means no being ignored, aiming for quick wins or creating false sense of urgency really ticks off buyers and then innately gets them to be skeptical of people who are trying to do the right thing in marketing and sales. There is overpromising and underdelivering, right? A lot of IT folks have been through the ringer with regards to products that just didn't live up to the hype. They've spent a lot of money, they've spent time, they've spent effort on solutions that have promised something but barely got off the ground. And so when things go south, they're back to square one hunting for something that is actually going to work. Getting ghosted after the purchase. So it's not our job isn't only about attaining the purchase. It's about the full journey, right? So let's talk about what happens after the sale, where things actually can go sideways, and I've seen it happen. So how many of you have been ghosted? I don't know. We can't have can anyone raise hands here? No, we can't raise hands in Coldcast. Anyway, so if a vendor is all about closing the deal, but then disappears when it comes to support, training, or any kind of help or value creation after they've handed over the cash, huge red flag. And so that gets them to be innately, inherently skeptical. IT products are not set and forget. They need updates, they need tweaks, they need to keep up with compliance and regulation coming out every year. They sometimes need a helping hand getting things integrated smoothly into what they've already got going on. So when a vendor doesn't seem to care about what happens after the sale, it tells you that the vendor is not really in it for the long haul. And they've experienced that. And so again, that stigma gets transferred over to us. And the last one, which I think is huge and sometimes overlooked among marketers and sales professionals, is that yes, buying decisions involved hefty investments, right? They impact an organization's operational efficiency, their security, their competitiveness. And so any wrong choice in operations, but also by extension in utilizing tools that impact operations can lead to downtime, data breaches, compatibility issues, which in turn cost lots of money and cause financial damage and reputation damage. What's more, in some markets, if you're the IT pro who dropped the ball, whether it's on security or you're s- setting up your infrastructure, making things work better, you could find yourself in a lot of legal hot water. And I don't know if some of you have read the breach stories for some of the big companies out there. If you're not reporting, you could end up behind bars. Yes, it's pretty rare, but it's not impossible. You could lose your job. And so if you're playing fast and loose with the rules as an IT buyer or not shouting loud enough when something's happened and we're not seeing that as a result of a specific product that they've acquired, that could have huge professional and personal implications. Now, I know this was a lot of negativity in the last 5, 10 minutes, but understand that this is the reality of the IT practitioner. This is why IT buyers are so skeptical. So, what do we as marketers and sales professionals do about this? We're going to dig into that. And what I want to do is actually show you a short framework of how I've built trust with IT buyers, with chief information security officers, engineers, architects, even CIOs, right? C-level professionals, those who are also sitting on boards, right? Before you persuade, you establish and maintain that trust. But why, Danny? So we're going to dig into now why it's important for buyers. Now, trust doesn't only reduce risk for us, it reduces risk for the buyer. Again, remember, building that trust, it's not only about and everyone feeling nice and good. It's about smart risk management decisions for both sides. When IT buyers trust what that vendor says about the product's performance, about the security, about the reliability, it lowers that chance of running into expected problems or security holes with new tech. It also lays the foundation for lasting relationships. Again, B2B buying is long, it's complex, and establishing those long-term relationships are critical so that the buyers know that they have a dependable partner for ongoing support, for updates, or even advice down the line. And it gives buyers peace of mind that they have a nod of approval from their colleagues and their bosses, right? Protecting their they have someone on their side protecting their professional standing so they don't have to worry about future issues with unreliable vendors. Plus, with everything going on with rules like GDPR, PCI DSS, it's more critical now more than ever knowing that the IT buyer can rely on us to stick to these standards and help them stick to these standards so that they don't have to deal with those legal headaches and fines. For us, as marketing and sales professionals, trust doesn't always make things nicer. Beyond that, it makes the sales process a lot smoother. When they trust us as vendors, they're more likely to have us at the top of the list down the line, even though they might not be ready to buy right now. They will need less convincing and they will come to a decision quicker. Once they trust us, they become loyal advocates who don't need to look at our competitors, which means a potential steady flow of revenue for us. Plus, if they trust us, then they're our best advertisers. We know word of mouth is huge. Telling their friends and boosting our reputation will not cost us a dime. So that good rep could cut down the sales costs and marketing costs because we've already gotten a track record to speak for themselves. This is a huge and underrated one, which people often overlook as well. Trust is also going to open up a line of communication and feedback, which is huge. It's a win for both sides on driving innovation and ensuring that what we offer actually hits the mark. All right, so how do we actually do this? Here's how I managed to establish trust with hundreds of IT buyers, particularly in the security space. I'll be showing you again that framework. We're going to go through it relatively quickly so that we can get to some of the cool stories and experiences from IT buyers down the line. Here we go. So I always say this to folks that I'm talking to before we can actually persuade buyers, before we can create value and ask for any transaction. The transaction is what I call the outer shift. Okay. We have to think about an inner shift. And I know shift sounds maybe scary. I'm not asking anybody to change. What I'm asking from folks is to actually think about the way you function and the way you behave in a different light. I'm asking many folks who might be stuck here to move from a profits over people mindset to a people over profits mindset. Because at the end of the day, and you'll see that later in the experiences that I'm sharing, it's about people. Technology is an enabler. We're here to help people and understand how we can best move them forward and maintain progress. So it starts with actually being genuinely curious. How many of you are actually curious and excited to learn about things that you don't know? or nurture things that you do know but need a little bit more validation there. I am. I'm a deeply curious individual, and I know in the conversations that I have with several IT practitioners, they're also deeply curious. Next is to nurture your empathy. Empathy is becoming empathetic is the systematic work that you need to do to actually identify your buyer's pain and truly understand what they are going through. Then being likable. How many of you think you're actually likable? I think I'm a little bit likable. Are you likable, Vladimir and Andre? I think you are. Being likable is the ability to be actually pleasant towards others to make them feel good. Now, all of this may seem like a dumb moment or redundant, but you'll be surprised how many marketing and sales professionals, the people seemingly more attuned to business acumen and to soft skills, are not in tune with this. It's not their fault. Like I said earlier, we are under a lot of stress. We are under a lot of aggressive growth goals. And so that blocks our ability to nurture these three inner characteristics, which require us to shift, right? That inner shift. But likability should not be nurtured at the expense of your credibility, by the way, which is doing what is right. So once you've established those three core characteristics or nurtured those three core characteristics, then you can start building and maintaining trust, right? Being trustworthy is the actual ability to be transparent, reliable, accountable, and resourceful without any hidden agendas. Without any hidden agendas. We've seen bait and switch without any hidden agendas. And as I mentioned, being trustworthy, it reduces that risk for you and for your buyers. So to maintain that trust, it has to be reinforced by the outer shift. And now the outer shift is the actual tangible tactical things that you do on a regular basis. Not the internal, what changes we need to make or nurture. It's the things we do on a regular basis that make some results for us and for our companies. So it's a move, that outer shift is a move from the shady tactics that piss off security buyers, which I've been guilty of for many years, to healthy tactics that empower and reduce the complexity for buyers. And that starts with active listening. It's not just comes in and comes out. It's demonstrating that you're actually paying attention to what someone else is saying and comprehending. Is anybody paying attention and comprehending what I'm saying? I wish I could call people on the spot here, but I can't. Shame. Active listening is also about reflecting back on what a person is telling you about their experiences, right? Then, once you've actively listened and you nurtured the curiosity and the empathy and the likability, you can then more deeply understand and become aware of other people's feelings. You could put those feelings together and start making change in the way that you do things. Once you've done that, you can start building the authentic connection. This is getting your foot in the door, right? You can do that either through a conversation started on LinkedIn, through email, in person, physically, virtually here with your buyers to continue fostering the initial connection, right? And you can utilize those empathy skills to have thoughtful exploratory conversations and meetings to continue probing for insight and understanding the challenges, the motivations, and adopting and nurturing these three core characteristics will then help you start delivering the actual value and demonstrating the value because you've already understood and you're starting to build up how you can help your buyer resolve the pain and achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve, right? So that clear path to action is going to help you further qualify and advance your potential opportunities and deals with skeptical IT buyers. This whole process shows that you've listened, you've done your homework, you're accountable, and you're resourceful. Trust. But one underutilized and overlooked step in the trust building process is taking a look at yourself throughout the process of and having self-actualization, which means understanding whether you and your buyer are a fit at the current moment in time. Understanding that if not, back off, continue that inner shift, continue nurturing those characteristics, and then pursue the outer shift, the active listening, the understanding, the connection, and the value creation at a later time. Super critical. Know when no means no, which is a great insight that I've learned speaking to IT buyers. And if yes, continue that cycle at a regular basis until you see revenue creation. All right, I want to dig into some of the experiences that I've uncovered when speaking to IT practitioners. For the last few years, I've gathered a lot of qualitative data, and this is my attempt at distilling that into rings of insight. So, one, we're going to talk about how do we start the conversation? How do we acquire the customer? And how do we retain them and keep them loyal advocates? Here we go. Number one, people over profits mindset. This is Joe, great guy. He works over at Delinea. He's also an advisory CISO, super sharp guy. And he told me something really great. Time Not time, excuse me, that's a later insight. What he says is that technology stays the same, right? People are customers. So it's regardless if you're on the vendor side or on the practitioner side, everything that we need to do is to help them. Remember, shift from profits over people to people over profits. This is, by the way, Chris Roberts, the grizzly bear that I was talking to you about. Awesome guy, great friend, super insightful. Come visit our podcast. We have a lot of insight into how to engage with IT buyers. And the one thing that he consistently says when we're on the podcast or even when people outreach him is do your research on your customers and don't expect to get anything out of the conversation right away. Just come with open arms, learn about who I am, come with the offer to have some whiskey or tea, and let's just have a conversation about what it is that's going on in your life. As Chris says, he says it with more informed interactions with people. I don't need to talk about work. I work all the time. Let's just have a burger or taco somewhere. Let's talk about what's going on. And then we can talk about whatever else comes up. So they are thirsty for more informal interactions. They are thirsty to just have the conversation. They are people at the end of the day. There's no reason why we should be treating them as metrics. We should be treating them as people. How do I get a skeptical IT buyer to buy for me? So Ryan, who's also a CISO, says something critical, and we all know this. We all know that segmentation is important. So he says that sometimes the person that's actually going to use the tool doesn't even want the tool. So we need to get buy-in. Alan, another friend who I spoke to, who's also a CISO, says, you don't even want to get to the C-suite anyway. It's the lieutenants who are the decision maker, the boots on the ground, the people who are using the tool. So it's critical for us to segment our audience, to cater our messages to those particular audiences. And in order to do that, we have to understand who we are. We have to go through that inner and outer shift for different kinds of audience segments. Here's Joe again, who says time is the most valuable thing for IT practitioners. So if you're going to get people to buy from you, we know content is huge, right? They like to learn. They like to learn new things, and they like to learn new things on their own term. They're tinkerers. They're very curious, as I stated earlier. So they always want to be more knowledgeable. They do that through podcasts. They do that through sometimes white papers. They do that through peer-to-peer conversations. But what's most important is that we have to let them decide when they will do that. We cannot push for that attention. We have to give them the opportunity to engage with what we are offering on their own terms. Now, with regards to messages, last year, I went to a big conference called RSA, which is one of the largest security conferences in the world, I believe. And I ran a buyer research report to ask practitioners What kind of messages actually resonate with you, not just at events, but in general digitally? And some of the insights were surprising, but this next slide was very validating for us. And what it says here is we're not interested in the technical specs and features. A lot of folks can do the same thing, but what is most important for us is to understand how your product and how your message helps us create business outcomes. And we want that validation through customer stories. And we want to learn through industry trends and benchmarks because at the end of the day, IT practitioners need to maintain progress within their organizations. They do not need to attain 100% or complete or absolute terms with regards to goals. They need to continually maintain progress. And in order to deliver the value, we need to do that through business outcome stories, customer stories of success, and industry trends and benchmarks. It's not about what it is you do and how you do with them out the gate. That is the enabler, as we spoke about earlier. Thought this was a compelling slide to share with you. In your messaging, a huge one, avoid ambulance chasing at all costs. Now, we know that in security specifically, a lot of stuff goes down. There are things flying everywhere, breaches, data breaches, hacks. And when a vendor comes to a practitioner and says, we can solve all the problems, and if you would have purchased us, this wouldn't have happened, false. That is not how you get on the right foot with IT practitioners. Taking advantage of negative press never gets you in the door and never gets you on the short list of vendors. Jenny tells me avoid excessive jargon and buzzwords. Hey, again, I was guilty of it. Sometimes I'm still guilty of it in my content marketing and in my conversations. But she says that all you're going to do is turn them off, right? You've lost your message. You've lost potentially an opportunity. When it is okay to use a buzzword is when you can actually back it up with claims and facts and not just say it out of context or because you want to sound smart like me. By the way, what are buzzwords for any of you who do not know? They are trendy words, phrases that are used extensively or out of context, or used to impress an audience. Please stay clear of that. These are very prevalent in business, in tech, in marketing, political arenas, obviously, so that it makes it seem like we're innovative and have authority and knowledge, but again, turns people off. Now, I want to go back to a quick story about buzzwords because this is huge. I spoke to a practitioner who said that marketing teams should actually reach out to people who do buzzword bingos and see through the message. Now, buzzword bingos are literally bingo cards with buzzwords on them, and they go through vendor halls or expo halls and pair the vendor to the bingo card to see who's actually using buzzwords. One, so they could probably, smack them on the wrist, but other to understand who's doing what. So I told myself, what if I actually walk in the buyer's shoes, right? And do buzzword bingo at an event. And so I accepted the challenge, which was a big challenge. And at RSA last year, I had went through the whole hall and took a buzzword bingo card. I also snapped photos of all of the what I thought was all of the booths at the event and then paired to see which vendors are using the most buzzwords, which buzzwords are those, and paired that with the buyer research report to see which buzzwords they think are of least value and also to see how they like to see messages at events. And what that yielded was an RSA conference messaging and analysis buyer research report, which was awesome. And you can download that at the end of the session here. But we evaluated those 353 booths, which was actually, I think, 54%. I thought it was 100%. That hall is huge. We did this over the course of 3 days, threw our backs out, had swollen feet, carpal tunnel, and holy moly, thousands of death stares from marketers and booth staff. It was crazy. We surveyed 50 security buyers. with regards to the data. And what we found is that 81% of the booths use buzzwords in their messaging at varying degrees, which I thought was alarming. Of those buzzwords that were most overused and ineffective, ta-da, AI, ML, zero trust, next gen, blockchain, cloud security, and XDR and turnkey. And these are validated buzzwords from actual buyers who said they are overused and ineffective. Why ineffective? Because they're used out of context. Practitioners, I'm sorry, vendors and booth staff cannot back up their claims when using these. So when you are at your booth or you're distributing digital content, make sure you can back up the buzzword with your claims. Now, Peter asked if we have a list of what does resonate. I do. I can share that offline happily. And yes, Peg says sometimes buzzwords show you are a modern solution. How do you balance using that? And again, like I said, if you can back it up with evidence and claims and explain how that buzzword ties into the business outcomes and into the actual product and solution, as it ties also to need and goal, then totally fine to use that buzzword, but not out of context. Tal, also a good friend, mentions, like I said, be honest about what your product can and cannot do as concisely as possible. We know that they go through RFPs. No one's going to read 100 pages. They don't have the time. So, like he says, blatantly cut the bullshit and just provide as much focused information as possible. I know it's easier said than done. But Malia, another good friend here, says, show, don't just tell. Those 2-minute demo videos, which you have the animation, sometimes they just want the actual live demo, show the code behind it, show the integration, and show the different challenges that can be overcome as it applies to the actual product. And 2 to 5 minutes, right? No long, drawn out demos. Gary Hayslip mentions set pricing expectations early before the proof of concept. No bait and switch, right? Don't surprise the buyer by jacking them up with a price after they started a POC, which takes time. It takes time to start POCs because they got to get integrated into the infrastructure. They already know what's going to be acceptable with the CFO. So if you want to reduce friction in the buying process and you want to close the sale faster, just tell them the price up front. And if you're going to move into the POC or POV, make the process more secure and frictionless. Nick tells me that vendors sometimes want to literally see everything. And that's a problem, even if you have an NDA in place, because if they need everything in the tenant and in the infrastructure, that causes more friction, more time. Time to value is increased, and you want to get them the value they need quickly, and you want to get to the sale quickly. I love this insight from Dima, who's actually our CISO advisor at Audience First. He's also the SVP of InfoSec at SEMrush. Some of SEMrush, great tool. I love this insight. He says, nurture relationships in your current company, even as a marketer and a sales professional, to carry your pipeline wherever you go. He and I had a great conversation about PAR. We have ARR, but there's PAR, which is potential annual recurring revenue. And you can take that potential annual recurring revenue if you help with the problem and bring value as part of that problem. Now, even if you didn't get the sale now, you didn't lose that customer. You have continuous partner wherever you go. That's huge. How do we retain IT customers and turn them into loyal advocates? Chris, we talked about this in the beginning. Chris says, don't ghost your customers and don't only reach out for renewals. He says someone sold him a tool and didn't call him back until the end of the quarter. But again, we talked about the complexity of even integrating sometimes after the sale. Sometimes we need hand holding. Sometimes there are bugs. We need the support. And genuine, regular checkups to understand what's going on with the tool is critical. Ferd says, build loyalty through responsiveness and technical collabs, right? If you can keep those lines exceptionally short and not make them wait, he will feel valued. Next one's a huge one. This is Cecil, by the way, right here. And that's me, super excited to be among security practitioners who actually like me. Peer to peer is valuable for us, right? Because they can't rely on us, as I stated, to tell them that our solution is the best thing since sliced bread, right? It's always good for them to ask advice. If you can sponsor those peer to peer communities or activities, or you can enrich their human experiences, let's say they have happy hours, and they do. Security practitioners have local happy hours. You could just sponsor that happy hour for them. Or if shit hits the fan and they're going through a breach, and you can just send them food and drinks while they're staying up at night and fixing infrastructure and fixing the hack, or working late hours, just give them a call, say, "Hey, how can we help you?" That goes a long way in your reputation as a marketer, sales professional, or a vendor. And Nick tells us, like I said, be here for the full journey, not just the sale, because it's a long play in IT buying. Now, the best advice, in my opinion, the most important advice is take feedback to heart, because once you do take feedback to heart, those buyers may return. Feedback is gold. I've built a business off of feedback, and it doesn't just get your foot in the door, but it gives you second chances with demanding and skeptical buyers, which sometimes you don't get those second chances. So I want to pause here and see if anyone has questions. And now that I'm looking at the slide, I'm realizing this is a weird picture, but I liked it. Anyway, questions.
First of all, I just wanted to share with you the comments. I don't know if you saw them, but people absolutely loved your session. The honesty, the storytelling. Some people said that was their favorite session, and I can agree. So thank you very much already for everything you shared with us. And we do have a couple of questions, I believe. Andre.
Yeah, and guys, we have time, so feel free to post your questions. We have 15 minutes before the next session, so plenty of time to cover all of your questions. So let's pick them one by one. I think we can
Let's
start
go.
with this one from Peg.
This is a great question from Peg. I addressed it earlier, but I'm happy to go through it again. So balance is the key here. How do you balance them artfully without turning them off with buzzword bingo? Again, if you can use that buzzword in context simply and back it up with evidence and claims that provide that context and understanding how it ties to business value, how it ties to outcomes, then I think you're in a safe spot. The exercise wasn't to tell people don't use buzzwords, it was to educate folks in utilizing buzzwords and creating messages that are most impactful and move the needle for both sides.
No, I have a kind of a follow-up based on some of the comments that I saw when people said, okay, I'm trying not to use the buzzwords, but then maybe they're in a role where they're writing the copy or providing the copy, but then they get the feedback from their leaders saying, hey, this doesn't sound, this sounds too basic, not engaging enough. So basically getting the how can we, the question is, how can we educate our maybe leadership or whomever else needs to give us the permission, let's say, not to use the buzzwords and to use more of the customer language?
That's a great question, and this doesn't only apply to messaging. This applies to just general action items that you need to and output you need to produce. Stress test it with customers and bring that data to the stakeholder. Look, the guy at this big bank said, or the gal at this big healthcare company said, they like it this way, they prefer this way. Here you go, right in front of you. You can do that if you don't have customers. You could do that by just picking up the phone and asking people through LinkedIn. That's how I got started with feedback. I just asked people, hey, I need literally 30 minutes, not 15 minutes, I need 30 minutes to go through XYZ. Are you in? Are you out? Or are you in later? Just not right now. And I've been pretty successful in gathering 8 to 10 people who have given me feedback, structured feedback based off of messages, landing pages, pitch decks, demos, which it's a good starting point. LinkedIn's a good starting point to find your ideal customer and start socializing with them. Um, I will also say that when you lean into the feedback, it's perceived better among IT buyers because they understand that you're trying to do things well versus trying to pitch them.
And I actually saw a question yesterday, and it was all about communities. So imagine if I'm a sales rep, business development manager, or account executive, doesn't matter, right? We have identified several communities with, let's say, for CISOs, engineers, doesn't really matter. What would be the best way to join the discussions without being salesy?
Pick a
How can you
pick a
leverage the communities?
But if you're accepted into the community, which would be awesome, take a look at
And
the
that would be
chatter.
another question.
Yeah, take a look at the chatter, see what they're talking about, and if you don't understand something, start asking open-ended questions to expand on it. But open-ended questions that tie to your objective for understanding. That's one angle. Second is to contribute your point of view. Yesterday there was a session about world views. I think world point of views. It was Watermelon PMM, I think, who was talking about it. Contribute your point of view. You don't necessarily need to pitch anything, but you can add to the chatter and the discussion and the value creation. Now, if you're not part of that community, and if you can try and understand who is in the community, maybe you can network with the folks in that community, start establishing the trust and the relationships with those folks, and they'll eventually invite you. One one example is the security tinkers. I think it's about 100 plus security practitioners, closed group. It's invite only. I've established relationships with quite a few of them, and at these big events, they invited me. And I'm a marketer. I'm not a practitioner, right? This is a closed group. They pay a fee every year. They do offsite parties. It's cool when you've established the trust and the credibility to be a fly on one of those events because you can see how they're interacting with each other, the conversations that they're having. If you don't have the networking capability and you don't know, again, you can either sponsor the communities or as a vendor say, hey, we just want to help facilitate something for you. Here you go. No strings attached, no hidden agenda. We just want to help you. That will pay down the line.
You're right. That was a good one. This is, I think, a good question that Ina observed that IT often sticks with outdated platforms despite the clear drawbacks. How can we stick with outdated platforms despite the clear drawbacks? So how can we effectively convince these stakeholders to embrace change?
That's a great question. And I will say that yes, they likely are not changing due to fear of change. Sometimes they are married to these legacy systems without wanting to be, right? They've come into the role and they just can't get buy-in to change because they're locked into a contract, by the way. Embracing change, it's again a long play. If you can continue establishing how that change or different solution or service or product delivers value over time back to the business outcomes, you might be able to have them shift tools. But again, you need to understand how this impacts the finances, how this impacts the operations, how this maintains progress in the organizations. So if you can tap into their maturity as well and into their roadmap of what it is they want to achieve and map your change to that roadmap and show and demonstrate how that the output from that change, I think you might have a great chance to convince them to shift solutions and solve even bigger problems from the existing solutions that's solving maybe smaller ones.
Awesome. Let's pick this one. Any other interesting insights to share from RSA beyond buzzwords?
Oh, yeah. I have a lot of insights. I do urge you to download the report. I'm going to share that later. So you'll see all of the insights there. By the way, we're going to do it again this year and we're going to hit 100% booths, not 54%. I'm looking for volunteers, by the way. So if anybody wants to help volunteer, we have some positions. What I recognize, which is a huge deal, and I spoke about this with another colleague and my partner for the report, George Comedy, I recognized that booth staff are not trained enough at these events, unfortunately. If you're going to send booth staff to speak with IT practitioners, they better know what it is you do, how you do it, and what problems you can solve for the buyer at the minimum, and how your tool works at the minimum. So it's in the best interest, and I don't see this happening very often, and at least in the companies that I've worked for, unfortunately. Yes, I can read out the wazoo. I can read all our knowledge articles, data sheets, but if you're not teaching your booth staff, one, how to behave from an ethical standpoint, two, how to follow up with conversations with buyers about your solution, and three, just understanding your solution, I think you're doing a huge disservice for the marketers and sales professionals who are there. That was a huge insight in actually having conversations with people at the booth. I saw one ad plastered around San Francisco. I did not understand for the life of me what it meant, and I made it a mission to find that booth at RSA. I found them finally. It was a small booth. I think it was an startup innovation central. I don't remember how they named that particular section. And I asked them, so what does this mean? And they could not tell me what this means, what their slogan meant. It was like pre-zero platform powered by AI. But what does it mean? Tell me what it means in 3 words or in 3 sentences in a minute. All they did was say, hey, come look at my product. I don't want to look at your product. I just want to know what your tool does. I don't have time in passing. So that was a huge insight. And then another insight from RSA is that offsite activity is fire. Unfortunately, to exist, and this is verbatim what buyers say, to exist, you should be at RSA as a brand, because if you are not there, you don't exist, which I think that's a load of horse caca. But offsite activity, ancillary events are a great way to deliver value, to connect with people, and show people who you are, what you're about, and what your brand is about.
Awesome. Let's cover one more question. And you mentioned you want to share the report. Or maybe let's share the report first and then we'll cover that question.
This is a report. You can download it. The QR code should work. I tested it. If it doesn't, let me know. Sometimes I make mistakes.
Yeah, and just in case, guys, so this deck would be in the content hubs, or if you want to be able to make a screenshot right now, so you can go to the pinned message and click the link and then just navigate to that slide and make a QR code. And in case if it won't work, feel free to reach out to Dani. And we have last question from Nalini. How do get a team to behave consistently across units to deepen trustworthiness?
That's a great question, actually. There's a lot of work to be done internally. So if someone can be a champion on not just buyer enablement from like a content and programmatic perspective, but buyer enablement from this is how we behave perspective, tie into HR, tie into the CEO. Every department should have a role in that program and it should be beyond, again, the content and the programs that you serve externally to the buyers. But again, we need to start with the inner shift, right? We talked about how do we nurture our characteristics? And that has to come from one, I think it has to come from the top within an organization. But if it doesn't come from the top, take the risk and be the champion of that particular inner shift program within and cultural program within the organization. And if you can't do it at scale right away, just start yourself and share with your sales organization, customer success, with founders. If you have like a general thread within Slack or some kind of knowledge base, you can share your insights and your findings and track how that behavior is affecting your metrics. So one thing that I did was, it was an experiment. I said, if I'm not getting access to buyers and I don't understand anything about them, I know precious little about them, let's start talking to them and see after 3 months, 6 months, what happens? What changes? And track those changes and share those changes with your organization. Be a test case, a use case to show the evidence. Look, this is impacting not just my metrics, but the organization's bottom line. If I can hook more conversations, more meetings, which directly impact opportunity creation, revenue creation, we should do this at scale, not just within the SDR function, but the founder function, R&D function, product function, CSM, sales, marketing, right? It takes time, but the sooner you start, the faster it is you're going to get to building trust at scale within the organization.
Thank you. And we have 1 minute left before we'll be switched to another session. Ariella, first of all, thank you for dropping a link. You guys can also visit that link and download the report. And let us know, how did you like the session? I know a lot of you told that the session was fantastic. Let us know in the chat, please. And from my humble opinion, that was fantastic. So first of all, the entire collateral, the examples, and it was, aside from the knowledge, it could be a masterclass in storytelling. So you nailed it down. Thank you, Dani.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Audience First. If you like what you've heard, feel free to follow or subscribe to Audience First on Apple, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast streamers.